Coming up this week on the Digital Lifestyle Show, Gary and Richard are here. We've got lots to talk about. We've got the Windows Insider Program MVP being retired, so we'll be talking about that. A bit sad, but we'll be talking about that. We've got new builds of Windows 11 and a new update to Windows 11, the 23H2. We'll be talking Qualcomm, new Mac processors, Modwave, Raspberry Pi modules, and lots more. So let's get straight to Richard and Gary. Gary and Richard, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Richard, you're coming from a different device this week.
Oh yes, I have. I am indeed. This week I'm actually coming from my Windows on ARM dev kit because it's working. You can always tell that Apple have just done an event because my M1 Mac has mysteriously stopped, or it's slowed right down. And I'm not saying that whenever Apple releases new hardware they slow the old stuff down. I wouldn't say that. However, it has slowed down dramatically for no apparent reason, despite me nuking it from orbit and reinstalling the OS. It's the only device in my shed, and I've got 2 Windows PCs, one ARM, one Intel. I've got lots of Raspberry Pis. Everything works fine, apart from the Mac, which doesn't seem to work properly on Wi-Fi. So, suspect the problems with the Mac. But Apple had a big event last night. I'm sure it's a coincidence.
Yes. Well, you can tell us about what's coming there later. We've got plenty to talk about this week. We've got some new builds of Windows. We've actually got a new release of Windows that's just happened today. I've got some Modwave stuff, and I want to actually start, Richard, with an article you wrote on the Register that me and Gary could probably fill you in some details on.
Yeah, I guess so. This is about the Windows Insider MVPs, which Microsoft appears to be planning to terminate the Windows Insider MVP program and shift all the existing MVPs, or rather have them nominated as Microsoft MVPs, which is interesting because this is a group of very passionate, very loyal people who basically exist to provide support and help create the community around the Windows Insider program. So I think the fact it's being terminated, and I think Microsoft plans to terminate it, is at the end of this year, I think, is their plan. It's a bit unfortunate. I should also point out I first saw this reported in Windows Latest as well. To be fair, Microsoft confirmed it to me late on Friday that this was happening, and yeah. So obviously, I know that you and Gary have both been involved in the MVP program over the years. So I guess really, what's your take on what's going on?
Well, first, go on, Gary. I'll let you go first.
I mean, it's a shame from the consumer point of view, because I think that, as you say, there's a really passionate group of people out there who give a lot of their time to the Windows Insider. I mean, I think the idea of moving us, well, obviously I'm a normal MVP as well, but moving everybody else across to the normal MVP program is a little bit challenging because I don't know which category they would go for, because I mean the main MVP program is very much business focused, whereas the Windows Insider MVP program is very much consumer focused. So I think there's some questions to be answered there. I do wonder if this is a pointer to where the whole Windows Insider program is going. What the focus is going to be going forward on that. I mean, obviously the MVPs have taken a lot of the load off Microsoft in supporting that program. It's interesting. Ian, what's your view?
Yeah, well, I think this it's a shame. It's, first of all, it's a good community, like you said, and it's very much consumer focused, whereas, like you said, everything else is very business focused. And the consumers, I don't think, have a huge voice within the MVP program, and that's specifically why there was one for Windows, the Insider Pro, which gives us consumers a voice. So I think we're losing that voice. I mean, most of the people will carry on supporting the community as also, and I'll just carry on doing the same things as was before. But as an MVP, you did have that inside track, and potentially that's going to go as well. So I think the voice of the community is going to be quieter anyway. And I think, like you said, the actual MVP program, you can get. I've been nominated for the MVP program was all Insider has been default nominated, but where do you fit in with that? And it just seems really strange that Microsoft's, and maybe it's not the biggest product, it's one of the biggest products for them, doesn't really have a community, or they're effectively ending the community built around it. So I think it's a real shame. I mean, people, remember I was a MVP and Microsoft MVP before it was a Windows Insider MVP, and that was for the Windows connected and entertainment devices, and before that with the Windows Media Center MVP. So we were part of that program. Then it was all stripped out, but it would make sense to me for it to go back in if there is a dedicated Windows consumer channel, but I don't think that is the case. We'll find out as we go through the nominations. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that. What it means to the Windows Insider program, I'm not quite sure. I mean, the writing has been on the wall for the Windows Insider MVP program for a while because of there's been a lack of engagement since sort of maybe this time last year, and I think Panos Panay was one of the people that perhaps maybe he left because there was some budget cutting and things like that, and maybe this is a victim of that as well. But yeah, it does make you think, well, what they're going to do with the Insider Pro, the MVP, not the actual Windows Insider program itself. Well, that can't be that expensive. I mean, I can't imagine the Windows Insider program was the MVP program was that expensive. I don't know how many MVPs was there? There wasn't that many, was there? 90.
200.
Yeah.
Once at the peak, it was a few hundred, but I think it's come down quite a lot recently.
Yeah, and what you get is a few nice benefits like an MSDN subscription and I think there's some Azure subscriptions and a nice little glass thing. It wasn't a huge amount of money, so I can't imagine it's saving that much money. But cutting the Insider program in general maybe would save some money, but it would seem to be, after they got rid of all the testers, that this is how they're getting the feedback on these bills. So I can't see how that could be replicated. But not every not everybody has these Insider programs. And Apple have a similar thing, don't they, where you can sign up for beta versions?
Silence.
Yeah,
absolutely solid. I mean, I'm trying to think. I think they do. I'm not sure it's comparable to the Windows Insider program.
No,
the Windows Insider program, though. I mean, you can sign up and get early access to betas of the operating systems and what have you. But I don't think it's really comparable to the way the Windows Insider program was. The intention of creating a community.
No, I think that's the sad thing. Is the for the MVPs is that it's part of the community that will go. Like I said, will carry on. I think majority of people will carry on just doing what they're doing anyway. You were in it for the money, as so to speak. So I just think I think it's the voice that's we're going to lose.
Yeah, and I think also you, as you mentioned, the contacts into the product group, and we probably don't lose those because we personally have contacts with the product group people, but I think it makes it more difficult to actually answer some of those user questions, certainly on things like Microsoft Answers and that way, where people have actually been able to go off and get answers properly and also highlight issues which are being raised, maybe by only a few people, but which are major, which may not have actually been pushed up the ladder on the Insider feedback side of things. So yeah, I think it's a shame. It's definitely a shame, but equally I can see at the moment Microsoft is squeezing budgets. You can see that they're letting the Windows Insiders go. Well, we didn't have to pay us in the first place, but they've also let an awful lot of full-time employees go recently as a cost.
The layoffs.
And
remind me how much money Microsoft made this quarter. I think they made quite a lot of money this quarter. It's just thinking. Yeah.
But Microsoft often do this when their predictions for the next financial year show some dire emergency coming or some issue. I mean, they were very good on. I mean, they did a lot of cutbacks just before the market crash. A few years back, and every time I see Microsoft doing things off, laying things off, or doing things like this, I know there's something bad coming. It seems to be.
Overall, I just think it's a shame, but I do think it highlights that perhaps 10, 20 years ago, perhaps let's say 10 years ago, the Windows was, up here, and the MVPs associated had a prominence, and now Windows isn't up here in Microsoft's strategy. It's further down, and the community around it is obviously further down as well. I mean, we know Microsoft certainly the consumer side is way down than it was 10 years ago. So maybe that reflects.
And also, I mean, if you look, there's no getting away from the fact that the Windows is declining in importance to Microsoft as the years go by. It's still a major product for them, but it's certainly in decline.
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's a great shame. At its peak, when the Insider program had the most engagement, it was really great that we got a lot of events, some in person, a lot online ones where you got other product groups coming to talk to us, and we got to find out quite a bit of information of things that were coming down the line. There was some stuff that that was really early when we got to find out about it, and we respected the NDAs and everything else. And then now, and over the last perhaps 12 months, we've not quite had that same level of engagement, perhaps signposting what was coming. I think it's from what, I still think the MVP program in itself, the Microsoft MVP program, is something that Microsoft's very keen on, and I think that's not going to go anywhere for now. But it's part of the changing way that Microsoft and the market and everything else. So I'm going to certainly really miss it, and miss the people around it at Microsoft and in the community. Whether I become an MVP, the Microsoft one, as like I said, I've been nominated. I'm not sure, because like Garry said, I'm not sure how my engagement fits with everything else. So I will be sad to see it go. But the MSDN subscription is great, because you get to play with things like, say, Hyper-V and things like that that you can then help out with on the forums and things. So I'm going to miss it.
RIP MVP.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it can go up. Well, I can put the certificate up with the Shelf of Doom with my Zune and my HoloLens and my band and my Windows Phone and all the other things that I've loved all go up there, and then they go in the loft. So yes.
Although speaking of Windows Phone, did you see the reports last week? I think Satch and the Della saying he felt that your Windows Phone was perhaps not a mistake as such, but could have been handled somewhat differently.
Yeah, the way it was done was what he was saying. Not that actually getting rid of it was a bad idea. The way it was done was a bad idea.
Exactly. Although what he described was, he kind of almost described the Duo, saying, "Oh yeah, we could perhaps go on for a different form factor that maybe could have brought more productivity tools and things." Or you tried that with the Duo, maybe a few years too late, but
Yes. Yeah, they don't have a good track record with mobile, it's fair to say. Although I'm still I still use my Duo. This is my main phone. Every time I pull it out to pay for contactless, and you get the phone out, people always ask me, what is that? Is that a Samsung? I said, no, it's a Microsoft phone. Wow, where can I get one of those? Well, you can't anymore unless you get an eBay one. But everybody that ever sees it is really impressed with it. But it's just a shame that they didn't pursue it. I mean, it had a monthly update yesterday, or I think it was Saturday or Sunday, or the weekend anyway. It was like a 4 gig update. Microsoft didn't really go into details. They said it was a security update, but normally the security is like 30 meg. So there was a lot of update in it, but I think it works great. The dual screen works great, and
that's a great device. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. It's a good device. Although what I thought was interesting was the other thing that came out last week was, I think one of the former Windows Phone execs came out to say and laid the blame pretty much fairly and squarely at the feet of the carriers. And I think certainly with Windows Phone, I remember when it came out, it did not occupy any shelf space in the stores because consumers simply weren't in. You could say consumers weren't interested. It wasn't being pushed. It's kind of almost a chicken and egg thing, really. Kind of the Lumias would appear. They'd have a few weeks of being the new thing, and then gradually they'd be shunted to the back of the store again, and your iPhones, your Android phones would be in the front, which I do remember that happening. Although I'm not sure you can blame that entirely on the carriers. There definitely was an issue with support and apps and things that did cause problems, and maybe the marketing push wasn't as hard as it could have been. I mean, I don't know if you've watched the BlackBerry movie at all.
Oh, I want to actually see that. Is that where's that available now? Is that a cinema, or is it on one of the platforms?
I think it's probably going to be on one of the platforms by now. I actually watched it on an aeroplane, so I'm not quite sure which platform it's on. But I'd recommend it mainly just to watch it, and you can see this, you can see the doom coming towards them. You think you've misjudged the market here. And it's within living memory, and I remember these devices when they came out. I remember the storm and things, and thinking, this is a terrible device. What have you done?
Yeah.
And it all becomes very clear as to what's happening behind the scenes. So yeah, I'd recommend it. Although there is I mean, Gary, have you seen it at all?
I haven't seen it. I know it's one of the ones I've been trying to catch up, and I haven't found it on a streaming service yet. So I mean,
there is, I'd say, one bit midway through. It feels like there's a changing of gears where you can't work out. Suddenly, a lot of characters change, and you don't really understand what's happened to them. But that may just be the fact maybe I dozed off on the plane. I don't know. But I would recommend the film. I have to say, looking at some of the Intel presentations and their reaction to the threat from ARM, I was getting some serious BlackBerry vibes there as well.
Yeah, it's got the Glenn Howerton in it, isn't it? From Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's a great one, because kind of we lived through that. I mean, I had a Windows Mobile before the BlackBerry was that big, and then you saw the rise of BlackBerry, and kids were getting BlackBerry, weren't they, and using them because of the chat services, and then it so quickly tanked.
It's how quickly it tanked and how quickly the iPhone just rose to replace it. It's just astonishing, really.
Yeah. So yeah, I fancy looking at that one. And I think with Windows Phone, I think also part of the problem was that they didn't really look at the worldwide market. I think they focused too much on the US market, because over here and in countries like India, I think the Lumias, especially the low end ones, did really well.
Yeah.
And I think we remember talking about that at the time, that how it was, I think was it the 550 or one of the cheaper ones. It was like one of the best-selling phones almost at the time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that there'll be a documentary made about what happened there, because, I mean, at the time, when was it Bill Gates, I think, who said later on that it was clear that there was kind of, there was scope for iOS and another, and Microsoft should have been the other, and except Google and Android have now occupied that spot. And Microsoft had that opportunity and basically blew it. It's been interesting to revisit all those things with the benefit of hindsight and thinking. I mean, I'm not sure it was the carriers. I'm not sure I fully agree with Nadella either about or some of the things that have been written. I mean, I don't think that Nadella expressed regret at dropping it. I think he expressed regret, as Garry said, of how it was done. And looking at other ways of how else they could have done it, because they definitely blew their opportunity. So I'm sure we'll see something. I wonder who would play Steve Ballmer.
Yes, I'm looking forward to hearing that one. And then the epilogue: Microsoft did go on to make another mobile device, and then cancelled that.
Yeah, that tanked as well. Yeah. So it was but they made an Android device, and you couldn't buy it anywhere.
It's and I think I mean, when you look at it now, though, I think you look at the marketing that Google is spending on the Pixel range, and it's a pretty distant third place, isn't it, compared to the iOS and Samsung Android phones, and even with the marketing clout that they've got with that. So I think it's then they're gonna, any other provider coming in, any other platform coming in is it's impossible now, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I'm sure BlackBerry felt the same way.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, and I used to know what the next thing is.
Yeah, this time next year we say, oh crikey, the tomato phone is now in charge. We're all using potatoes.
You say potato, I say potato.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's probably one. Especially the BlackBerry one will probably be taught in business schools, won't it? Of how not to, how to. I mean, how to not run your brand or your tech.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend the film because I was aware of how the tech stack worked behind the scenes. It's just very interesting to see how they were completely blindsided by the iPhone, and kind of to a certain extent, at the time I agreed. I mean, I didn't think touchscreens were going to catch on in the way they did, and they really did catch on very, very fast. And then BlackBerry just made some horrendous missteps with their product. It's just, yeah, it's a film I'd recommend. It's just to sort of see how these things. Well, I mean, obviously there's large chunks that are fictionalized, but it's kind of how things behind the scenes happened.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few of those tech ones, isn't there? But like that. But I think I love anything like that, especially you watch one set, pre your involvement in the business, so which are interesting. But one like this, where we were all in and talking about and everything at the time. This podcast has saw the rise and fall of BlackBerry. Now, talk about future things as well. You alluded to the Mac or an Apple event. So, did you get to watch it? I didn't watch it to be honest.
Yeah, I did watch it, so you don't have to. It was a weird event actually. It was basically it was dubbed Scary Fast, I think they called it, and it was an online only event. So that gave an idea that Apple. It was not in person. It was on very late at night. I think it was started at midnight our time, which is just incredibly late, really. And it was really the coming out party for the M3 chips, which they're going to put into the MacBook Pro, I think, and also the iMac. I don't know, Gary, if you see much about it. The crux of it being that you got more addressable memory, I believe, and they go faster. But what was really weird and what struck me watching it was the comparisons they kept doing were to the M1 and the Intel. I didn't see many comparisons to the M2, which is just a strange thing to admit, really. They kept saying how much faster it is than the M1. You think, well, I should hope so. It's 2 generations on. It should be faster. That's not a surprise to me. I was surprised not to see more about how much quicker it was than the M2, which is, of course, the chip in theory. It's superseding or is better than. I mean, some of the graphs made it look better, but I was just surprised. But it looks like a really fast chip. And of course, ironically, it came hot on the heels of the Qualcomm announcement last week, where they announced the I think it was the Snapdragon X Elite, which benchmarks, I think, as quick or quicker than the M2 on some benchmarks. And that's, of course, the great hope for Windows and ARM.
Yeah, that's always the thing as well, that if you're behind and you're catching up, just by you can't. You've got everybody else is also developing new products, isn't it? So it is hard to catch and then overtake. So
yeah, I mean, and I think we're going to have to wait. Is it until next year until the first Windows and ARM machines start appearing with these Qualcomm chips, or is it sooner than that?
No, I think it is next year. Yeah.
Whereas, of course, Apple's first M3 machines are going to appear in the next month or so.
Yes, and I think that's the difference, isn't it? So this time next year, Qualcomm might be a new Snapdragon, but of course, Apple will be talking about the next chip and so on. It takes time to catch up.
And of course, I'm using Windows and ARM here as we speak. I'm using my Windows and ARM dev kit, which Gary, you'll be interested to know the clock does still run slow. It has to sync every morning. I've got a bit of script that I run now to force it to do a sync every hour or so, because otherwise the clock just starts to get slow. It just loses minutes. It's really weird. I'm going to assume it must be hardware. Got to be hardware. It's very strange. But what's interesting is using it. You can see just how many processes even now I'm still using that are Intel. It's having to use Intel emulation for. Whereas if you use, Apple, a device based on Apple Silicon, Apple has forced everyone to shift their apps across to Apple Silicon now. So you don't see anything at all or it's not on things that I do. Whereas on my Windows machine, I'm still using the Intel emulation, and you can really tell when you move into an app that's using Intel emulation, because it's like everything slows down. So at the moment, I've got, for example, this call we're conducting, I'm using Edge, and that works really well. But equally, I'm using Chrome, which, unless you know where to look, you're going to get the Intel version, and it's noticeably slower.
Yeah, I think that's always the thing with Microsoft world, is they always go for backwards compatibility, and it's at a cost of sometimes performance and things like that, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It's a shame. So with these new machines that are coming out for Windows and ARM, unless everything is compiled natively, I don't think you're going to see the kind of performance increases or the performance boost that we're seeing from the benchmarks. Because the current machines, if you're running native code, work really well. As soon as you have to drop into emulation mode, things start to go a bit not so good. But the problem's improved massively over the years, but it's still a problem. It's still there.
Yeah, I suppose it's just a thing, isn't it? Just the more they continue with it, and then the better it will get. What Microsoft often do is bail out too early, isn't it? Like Windows Phone and others. If they keep persevering, then maybe there's a chance that they'll get there. But if they just bail out, then they're never going to get there.
Yes, I mean this box I'm using here was what was called Project Volterra, and I would have expected to have seen a new box by now, or something about a new box by now. I mean, I'm rather hoping we'll see something at Ignite, which is due obviously in the next couple of weeks.
Yes, I think what will happen is they'll just quietly not do anything, and then this will be unsupported, and that'll be the end of it. But then you've got these new chips.
Don't say that, Ian. Don't say that.
That's the pattern. But then you've got these new Qualcomm chips coming, haven't we? So there's obviously still stuff going on with it.
Yeah.
So hopefully that means that it will get improvements and so on. So yeah, it's if it wasn't for them talking about Windows at the Qualcomm event, I would have thought maybe they've gone quiet on ARM, but I don't think they have they?
No, I mean, I was made quite hopeful, because I've had a bit of a downer for a while on Windows and ARM, because it has just gone so quiet. So seeing those, seeing it being talked about, I thought, okay, great, perhaps there is hope yet, but we do need to see some proper support from Microsoft. I need to see some Surface devices, really, using this new hardware, and I would have kind of liked to see Microsoft announcing stuff alongside, but we'll see.
Yeah, we're not quite up to that yet. They've got to. That's putting the money where the mouth is, isn't it? And
exactly. I mean, the danger is if we have to wait a year for a new Surface device to use the Snapdragon X Elite, then Apple will be showing off the M4. Which I'm no Apple fan. I'm not a Windows fan, but I do believe in competition. And I think the danger the risk we were facing now is there's a danger that Microsoft is almost retreating from the Windows world, I think, and looking more at cloud, because that's kind of where the cloud is, where their revenues are. Maybe they're not so bothered about Windows. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, yeah, maybe that points back to early on in the discussion. Yeah. So yeah, maybe. Yeah, I think ARM's still got a chance. But I think in general, as we said at the beginning, Windows isn't.
I'd say ARM's fine. It's Windows and ARM that I'm worried about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I mean. But the whole Windows is less priority in general. So Windows and ARM obviously is a smaller segment of the shrinking mind share. Maybe it's that. Put it that way. But I still holding out for an ARM-based Surface Go. I would it would have been perfect for me, because what you're using now, Edge, and some a bit of Office and stuff, is exactly what I use the Surface Go for now. So an ARM-based Go would be perfect. I don't use any other apps that aren't available on ARM, as far as I'm aware, on the Surface Go. So it would be a perfect device for me. I've been quite happy with that. Maybe next year.
I hope so.
Now we did get some new builds of Windows in the last week or so. So we got a dev build and a canary build. The dev build was really boring. There was very little in that one, wasn't it? That it was just a few minor changes in there. The canary build was actually quite a few more changes. I did do a video on the canary build, and interestingly enough, as I mentioned a few weeks ago, using the YouTube search is quite an interesting way of working out interest in things. Now it's not that scientific, because it could just be what you capture at that time, and not everybody's doing videos and so on. But I've now finding more people looking for the canary builds on YouTube than the dev builds, and for a while it was the other way around, but it's definitely switched back in the canary builds favor now. So people are interested in these builds, and I'm seeing the people watching the videos and commenting on the videos. So yeah, there is a genuine interest in them. So some of these, but the canary builds anyway, I had a couple of minor changes. Start menus changed, some grouping of the start menu and some other things like that. The main change actually with this canary build was that the Copilot's included. Copilot wasn't included before, so it's kind of funny, isn't it, that the canary one, which is the one that is the most out there, risky, for the head builds, as the last one to get Copilot. I'm trying to think what else. The other thing so that was build 25982, and then we also got 23578 for the dev channel, but there was only a few minor changes on that one. The beta channel got a new build as well, so which was quite interesting. So there was a couple of bits and pieces with that one, but I think beta channel is pretty much what the 23 H2 is. And in fact, we should talk about that, because the 23 H2 has been released today. It
has indeed, yes, finally out. Although we kind of had a preview of it last week, didn't we? Because they did the preview of the knowledge base. I don't know. It's I'm trying to think what the knowledge base article is. Is it KB503145? I think, and that was released in preview form last week, and it contains pretty much all the new features that you'll find in 23H2, and that was released for 22H2. This is where I get very confused, because this week it's come out, and this is now 23H2, but it's basically that knowledge base. It's basically that patch, isn't it? I think. Yeah. So the 23H2 includes all the features that we've talked about a few weeks ago, which is the start page in settings and so on. So that was File Explorer stuff. Backup and restore, and yeah. So that was all in the what was classed as the 2023 update, but that was feature changes. The 23H2 bit is the under the hood system changes, which effectively I think of it now as the old school service pack. So 22H2 got all these nice new features, and then today we've got the under the hoods bit has been improved, lots of fixes and things like that, but all sort of core stuff and all the nice shiny bits have already been done. So that's the way I'm kind of thinking it at the moment. Yes. I mean, what I do think is interesting about this is this kind of does emphasize the change in approach that we're seeing with Microsoft now, where before you would have a major update and all the things would be in the update. Now they're just going to turn the things on as and when they're ready, and you will have the changes under the hood, but you won't realize it happening. It's kind of a much more, I don't know, seamless approach to updates. I mean, I kind of miss the big bangs and things, the huge, here's the update, it's coming. But I can see how this is much more appealing for an end user, that the things just gradually improve over time, as opposed to you being forced to say, right, you can have your update and everything's going to change at once. So I guess I like this, but I also miss the days when when we used to have a big old bang. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm excited to talk about when a lot of things were changing, but yeah.
Yeah, I've kind of have both my head's in, my hat in two camps on this one. From my day job side, I don't want big bang. I want nice, small, contained, testable releases that just get updated and rolled out and no one notices. That's what I want. But then from my enthusiast side, I want big bang, lots of shiny changes, stuff for us to talk about and get interested in. But yeah, but the bit that pays the wages says no. You want a nice small.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't want big bangs with when you're rolling it out to hundreds of machines. It's you don't want that, and so it makes sense that Microsoft doing it this way. But it does kind of, I do miss those once a year big events. This is what's coming to Windows. Maybe the thing that they should perhaps do is flip them around, is rather than having an event say, look what we're bringing to Windows, is maybe they should start talking about things that they will be bringing in Windows in future, and then but then there's the old thing, they don't like talking about it.
Well, exactly, because I mean they have been quite badly burned by that approach, haven't they? Where they announced various things like the was it the groups and stuff? I think was the sets. The sets, that's it, sets.
Yeah.
They made a big thing about that, and then it just quietly disappeared.
Yeah. So I suppose no software. I don't know, Gary. You're a developer. Which approach do you think would work better for you? Would you like to pre-announce stuff and then say, look what we're doing in the next 12 months, or do you wait till you've done them and then talk about them? Gary's silent. He muted himself. I don't want
to comment. I always believe in under promising, over delivering. So why not say nothing? Then you always over deliver.
Yes. Yeah, it's. I mean, it is difficult, isn't it? But I wonder how much the marketing team for the Windows guys, they must be hard to sell at the moment, because there isn't a big event to build some anticipation about. Maybe that's why I still think there may be a Windows 12 in the works, because it doesn't mean it's a new operating system like it did in the old days, but it just means it's a marketing thing to tie everything together, bring a bit of AI and all that. That's that's your big bang then.
I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a Windows 12 in the works, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about it around build next year, I would think. Yeah. Not least because we do have this October 25th deadline looming, where October 2025 deadline rather, where Windows 10 support will stop. So you've got to have got Windows 12 out by then. I think just from a marketing standpoint, to say, well, you're Windows 12, 11 is the old one, 10 is now old and busted. So I would be astonished if you don't see a Windows 12 next year.
Yeah, that would make sense. But like I said, I think it's more of a it'll be a lot of shiny things on top of a core that is solid, and that's what Windows Insiders are testing. Maybe with the Canary stuff now, it's that core stuff, and we won't get to see the UI changes until maybe next year. So a lot of updates for Insiders to test, but there's not been anything hugely exciting at the moment to try out. But I did like the accessibility features that are included.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but the UI in Windows 11 is looking pretty good now. As time's gone by, it's getting fairly consistent. It's good. I only said it because recently I had to write a piece about Windows, because obviously it's the 11th anniversary of Windows 8, and I've forgotten just how jarring that experience was. So
yeah, that's something I think that's what I miss really. Windows 7 was great, solid, dependable, but it was just getting dull. And then Windows 8 was, well, look, something new, something different. We're going to do this, but of course that was great for the enthusiast me. But did I roll out Windows 8? No.
Users would have screamed if you'd done that.
Yeah.
The big problem with Windows 8 was it was just too different, and it was also designed for touchscreens. I mean, it was really. I mean, use Windows 8, and I think Surface devices in particular still really miss that. The fact Windows 8 is not there anymore. That concept, because I mean that the Windows 8 start menu worked so well on a touchscreen. Just swipe it through. The tiles were animated. It worked really, really, really well. It was, since most Windows machines weren't touchscreens, they were ordinary desktops. It was a bit of a shock.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and looking back at it, I could see that whereas I, as an enthusiast, loved it and enjoyed playing with it, testing it, and stuff like that. For the I never bothered to roll it out to normal users because I knew it would be too much. So yeah, I was quite you can see. I kind of wish that they'd almost split the SKUs as well, so that Windows 8 Professional was the desktop based one, what was eventually Windows 8.1 style did that sort of default, and then they had a Windows 8 tablet edition or consumer edition on the Surface and other devices that was the other way around. It wouldn't have been that difficult for them to do that.
Exactly, and that I think would have worked, and the fact they didn't do that, I think, was what doomed Windows 8 really. The fact they kind of forced this tablet interface on a user group that just didn't want it. Had they done a different SKU, said, well, this is our Surface tablet SKU, it would have been a lot better. But again, we are speaking with the benefit of hindsight.
And
I can see from a platform standpoint what they were trying to do. They're trying to unify things, have one framework. Although I'm sure Garry can tell us behind the scenes, it wasn't like that at all. But
yeah, Garry, the idea later, it did come sort of that adaptive UI, didn't it?
It did,
yeah. And I suppose with Windows Phone and everything else, you can see why they were trying to go into that one UI style. But as a developer, was it that bad or difficult for you?
Well, the developer story at the time was a bit of a nightmare anyway, because of the whole move away from .NET, which was going on at the time as well, which wasn't very popular, and lots of products which had been supported suddenly not supported for developers. And it wasn't a pleasant time being a developer around that then, for a lot of the Windows developers. So yeah, I think there was a lot of questions about it. I mean, what we ended up with Windows 10 and beyond, or 11, 10, 11, is actually a really good developer experience. I mean, you can develop really well for that. But yeah, certainly at the time, it was a little bit problem about it. I mean, I love the tablet interface on 8. As Richard said, it was absolutely perfect. And if we'd had a proper responsive design which could react to having a keyboard plugged in properly and switching over to the right and the mouse plugged in, then you switch away from touch, then yeah, there might have been a different story. But yeah, water under the bridge, as they say.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I didn't realise it was 11 years as well. That doesn't seem that long ago. So what happens with Windows going for Windows 12 and so on? That's the thing that keeps us going, keeps us interested, that we'll see what comes next. That's what we want. But from day job stuff, keep it simple, please. I did have a couple of the bits and pieces I wanted to talk about tonight as well. Over on the music front, I have a new sound collection available for the Modwave. So that's my synth newest synth. You may remember the PPG Wave. You may not know the name, but you've certainly heard the sound on people like Tears for Fears and Depeche Mode, Thomas Dolby and Tangerine Dream. Early 80s synth that was pretty much ahead of its time. It was a digital synth in the time when a lot of synths were analog. It was 8-bit initially, with wavetables, and you can get these wavetables online now. And so I've imported them into the wavetable, into the Modwave, and recreated those sounds. So I've got a big collection of sound, 44 sounds, a free download, and there's a video to go with it, which where I can sort of demonstrate the sounds as well. So if you've got a Modwave, you can download that either into the hardware one or the software one. And what's interesting with this on the Modwave as well, do you remember I talked about it being based on the Raspberry Pi? I think it was Compute Module 3, was it? Where we talked about it? Yeah. So they've just announced a Modwave Mark II that they haven't specifically said what's inside it, but they said it's improved processor. So I guess it's using one of the new compute modules, because the current one has 30 note polyphony, which means 30 simultaneous notes can go at once in various combinations. I know you've only got, say, 10 fingers to play, but you can hold notes and have back, other sounds running and layers and things like that. But the new one is 60, so they've effectively doubled the processing power on that. So I don't know what compute module they've upgraded it to, but they've just announced it and it's not shipping yet. So I don't know, Richard, what's the latest? Is it the compute module 4 or is it on the 5 now?
Yeah, it's the compute module 4. The 5, I think, is due to ship next year.
Right, so I don't think they would.
I would think they'll be using the 4 for now. No.
Yeah.
And that's assuming, that's assuming you can even get a Pi 5. I mean, when the Pi 5 is in very short supply, but the compute module, I know they're planning to do on next year.
Right. So this is shipping soon, and from what I've seen, a couple of sources saying as well, part of the reason they've done this is because they couldn't get the compute module 3 anyway. So there was still a demand for the Modwave, but they couldn't supply it because they couldn't get the module 3. So they've had to upgrade it to the module 4, and then they've added a few extra features. Not a huge amount of feature changes, but it's more the core processing power, I think, that's increased. So they've refreshed all their models now that use the compute module in the last 6 months. So I'm guessing they switched them all over to these new Raspberry Pis, which is great to see, because I think it's great for the Pi Foundation in general. I suppose that this all helps develop the product and fund development.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So anyway, so if you've got one of these, or if you fancy getting one of these Modwaves, if you do get one, check out my videos. I actually got a video on how to do sound design on there, and as I said, we've got free sounds on it as well. So have a look at that. Right. What else? Did we have any EV news this week, Gary?
Oh, I suppose the big EV news is the regulations which were in a white paper last year, which we talked about on charging, making pricing clearer and having a guaranteed sort of uptime on chargers, and a lot of other bits and pieces around that, and sort of pretty good consumer focused stuff has now passed into law. So that was actually passed by Parliament last week. So that, and I think the clearer pricing thing is probably the biggest thing. And it was really funny because on the day the law was passed, Shell actually sent out an email to all their customers about their pricing, which actually breaks the new law, because it actually has a connection fee which is not allowed under the new law. It has to be priced in per kilowatt hour. So so that was quite amusing, but I think it will take a while to get used to. And obviously the problem with this is not the fact obviously the law's there, but who's enforcing it and whether it actually gets enforced will be the challenge. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. And
is this so this is like an act of parliament type law, or is it?
Which is it covers a lot of ground actually, and basically contactless payment is for anything over a certain speed of charging has to be allowed. So so things like Ionity, which haven't allowed contactless payment up to now, will be installing contactless payment, which will make life a lot easier for people. So there's a lot of really good stuff in it, but the clear pricing I think is really good. I think that's the one I'm really interesting. It's particularly interesting. So just want to remember the other bits on there, because there's a lot in there. It's an awful lot in there, in that, those regulations, and I was part of the consultation on that, so it's quite interesting to see some of my bits I mentioned, as did a lot of other people mentioned, that it could come into force. So it's nice to see that actually the charging infrastructure at least is there. It's good. But I think the one which I think I'd be interested to see if it does get enforced, because certainly the regulations in terms of uptime on the charges would be really interesting to see how that goes, because none of the charger providers are meeting that at the moment.
Yeah, they've got to start. They'll have to start going out there and getting them fixed and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's good to see that there's a lot of been backtracking recently, or talk of backtracking. So it's good to see that some of these things that are going to make life better for consumers, coming into place and still happening.
Yeah.
Was there any other news we had for this week?
That's it for me.
Yeah, I can't think of anything else. It's been a slow news week, as they say.
Yeah. I've got a couple of other new bits of smart home stuff to try, so I'll have to. So I might have those on available next week. Very much still enjoying my candy lights that.
Actually,
very impressive.
There is one more thing, as they say.
Yeah.
You just prompted me when your mention of smart home. I don't know if you've seen, but Amazon are dropping their support for IFTTT.
Are they?
Oh, really?
So you will not be able to use the IFTTT with Alexa, which is interesting. And I kind of guess I can kind of see why, because Amazon are trying to do all the stuff that IFTTT does in routines, and they're having to pay IFTTT for the pleasure of actually using their service, which always struck me as the wrong model for the charging. But so yet another nail in the coffin of IFTTT, I think.
It makes you wonder how they can survive now, because I'm guessing when they switched to the paid model, it drew a lot of people. A lot of people just didn't bother with the service. It was a great service, but never quite, for me, it was never quite good enough to warrant paying for. But I guess it was expensive from their side. But then if they're charging Amazon as well, they were trying to get both. Go after both sides. It's not going to fly, is it?
No.
I think that that's probably one of the highest use case of it. I would have thought from Alexa, certainly triggering the routines. I know I used it for. It was always, that was one of my triggers. But all those third-party services that I kind of used to use have all gone away now. Stringify was probably one of the best ones, and now I'm just using those routines via the app now, which kind of works really. So I've got like a Hive trigger turning on my Hue lights, and that's an Alexa routine. So Alexa has become that. It's not quite as good as IFTTT, but it's not far off being able to do all that stuff now, is it?
It's definitely getting close now. Yeah, it's definitely getting close.
Yeah, it's a shame though. In a way, it was a great service, and another thing, another great service that have struggled over recent years, especially with introducing fees and paid fees, and this seems to be a model we see quite frequently, not just in smart home, in all sorts of things, isn't it? A service comes on the market, it's usually free or fairly cost effective. You get involved and you get drawn into it, you start using it, and then they introduce various payment tiers until eventually people stop using it because they're not worth the money, and then the service goes away. You see it across the internet multiple times, don't you? Would say not just smart homes, across the board really. And I guess the big guys as well, like Amazon, just kind of suck up a lot of that as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people angry about this, and there's been this usual thing in the States that people say a class action because they advertised Amazon devices supporting IFTTT, and they're taking that away now, and should they be allowed to do that? But yeah, it's
a lot of smart home devices on the box. It usually says Amazon IFTTT and all that. And they're all dropping away. I suppose it's like the market matures. People, perhaps it was always a fairly niche market at the beginning anyway, and then just because the broadness of Apple, the Amazon device and Google and everything, everything else, and like the Samsung, isn't the smart things as well? That's got a lot of options in it as well. So it's all, there's a lot of other options, but losing losing Amazon is probably a pretty difficult one for IFTTT to recover from.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I would think anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I was currently using IFTTT for was my charge point. I could interface through to that to actually control it, but I think I'll just come up with something direct for that, and then I can actually get rid of the subscription.
Yeah. That's what happens. You push people like that, and they just come and, especially someone that's perhaps your early adopters who are quite tech savvy.
Yeah,
they end up being tech savvy enough to go and find a better solution or a cheaper solution. Yeah. Well, that's perhaps good. We've got business lessons as well, so we've not just had tech news. We've had tech business lessons this week, I think.
Mm.
Well, I think I'm going to go and try and find the BlackBerry movie now to watch as well. So that sounds. I really fancy to watch that. So I'm not sure I'll be able to make my wife quite sit through that. I can make her sit through quite a lot of fairly esoteric films. I'm not sure the BlackBerry movie.
You'd be surprised. It's quite gripping. It's a good film.
I'm sure
I recommend it. I didn't enjoy it, but as you say, recognise the tech that I lived through that, and oh no.
yeah, I'll definitely have a look at that. Now, as we record this on Tuesday, it's Halloween. I've actually got a Halloween style track just released on my Spotify account. So this is in the style of the sort of early 80s horror films, with the synth John Carpenter style intros to films. Yeah. So it's called Redwood, and it's on my Spotify now as well. So, and I'm gearing up for my next album. I've got 10 tracks selected, so just got to finish mixing those, and that's ready to go. So I should have one up by probably at the end of November. So another few track. I think I'm up to 30 monthly listeners or something like that now. So almost ready to retire off the Spotify revenue.
Exactly.
Actually, one just a quick thing, I'll mention that as well. Spotify currently, you get a bit of revenue from your streams. It's something like 0.001. So I think I've earned sort of £5 in 12 months or something like that. It's not a lot of money because it costs it. You have to pay to get onto Spotify via a record distribution label anyway, and so on. So, yeah, you're not going to make any money out of it. But apparently they're changing it. So if you go below a certain number of streams, I don't know what the level is at the moment, but if it's below a certain point, they keep the revenue. So there you go. So little guys like me who not that I was ever in it for the revenue, but even if you're a bigger group, maybe a young group just getting going, and you're getting a few 100 streams or something like that, and maybe you're getting a few £100 out of it a year or something like that, that revenue is going to go away, and Spotify are going to keep that. But the bigger artists who are above the thresholds will get the money. So it does seem a bit of a smack in the face or a slap in the face to some of the smaller musicians. But like I said, I don't know the exact details yet. I'll try and find it for next week's show. But a lot of small indie musicians are upset with Spotify, but I don't think that Spotify were ever the greatest ones for revenue, and I know a lot of people were hoping that Bandcamp would be the way, and that's had a lot of issues as well recently. So
it has,
change of ownership and things like that, isn't it? And so it does seem difficult for up and coming musicians to get the music out there and get some payback from it, which is a real shame, because if there isn't, then people go off and do other things, and there isn't the investment in new music. I mean, I'm never interested in doing it for the money. I'm purely doing it just because I like recording stuff and I want someone to listen to it. But I think these new musicians, new groups, small groups, indie groups should be able to build a career from it. But it seems Spotify want a bigger cut, which does seem a shame to me.
They may run foul of EU regulations on that, is what I'm hearing, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm going to say there's all kinds of things happening in the EU at the moment, aren't there?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll try and get the numbers actually and let you know. I just saw something on it briefly yesterday, so I was expecting them, to be honest, to say if you don't get X number of streams per month, then you get kicked off the platform. That's probably the next thing coming.
I can tell you what you need to do to get more streams.
Yes.
Sega Outrun.
I know you've had that on your list, and this new album I've got is a pure synthwave album. And
Okay.
Outrun is a genre, is a subgenre of synthwave or a similar genre. So maybe I can fit those in next. But
Obviously, without causing any kind of takedown to happen. Just a really key thing.
in the style of
sufficiently different. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Inspired by it.
Yes, exactly. That'll be the next thing I come to. Right, where can we find you, Garry?
At Garry WMA on all the platforms, whether they're formerly known as something or not.
Yeah. And Richard, where can we find you?
Pretty much anywhere at Richard Speed, apart from X/Twitter.
Excellent. Right, well, I'm going to play out with my Halloween track. This is called The Redwood, and we'll see you next week.
Again.
Very good.